The Galactic Combat Academy hung on the edge of the Orion Arm like a pretentious chandelier radiating self-importance across 3 star systems. It wasn't merely a school. It was the institution where the galaxy's military elite were forged, polished, and shipped out to command various cosmic peacekeeping operations, which, as cosmic peacekeeping operations, tend to go involved a shocking amount of non-paceful activities. Commandant Rex, a 7-foot-tall Denarian with skin like volcanic obsidian and patience, in equally short supply, stood at the viewport watching the latest batch of recruits disembark from their transport vessels. His secondary breathing apparatus, an elaborate configuration of tubes and filters that made him look like he was perpetually sucking on a mechanical octopus, whistled with displeasure. A human. They sent us a human. Vex's voice resonated through his breathing apparatus, giving his words an unintentional bubbling quality. I haven't seen one of those outside a zoological exhibit. Lieutenant Kazit, whose exoskeleton gleamed under the station's lights like a freshly waxed sports vehicle, chittered in what passed for laughter among the Aeroplan species. Central Command must be scraping the bottom of the recruitment barrel. Next, they'll send us a flub-dub and then we'll need to install pudding pools in the living quarters. The human in question was stepping off the shuttle now, looking absurdly fragile among the parade of multi-limbed exoskeletal, tentacled and occasionally plasma-based life forms that constituted the new cadet class. He stood at an unimpressive height with a distressing lack of natural armor, no visible secondary or tertiary limbs and skin that appeared to tear if you looked at it too aggressively. "What's the gravity on their planet again?" asked Vrex already, formulating what would become the Academy's most talked-about prank in recent history. "About 1/3 of standard galactic measurements," replied Kuzit, their mandibles clicking with glee. "They're basically evolved in a bouncy castle perfect." The Academy's orientation hall buzzed with the sounds of hundreds of different species attempting to communicate, resulting in a cacophony that resembled a malfunctioning universal translator having a nervous breakdown. Holographic displays flickered with the Academy motto in 67 different languages. Excellence through suffering, glory through pain, lunch through that door on the right. The human who had introduced himself as Jack stood alone in a corner, his standard issue uniform hanging off his frame like formal wear on a coat rack. The other recruits gave him a wide berth not out of respect, but because he was correctly categorized as a curiosity, like finding a plastic fork at a formal dinner. "Attention recruits." The booming voice of drill instructor Magluck cut through the noise. McGurk was a Teslan, a species primarily composed of concentrated electricity contained within a semi-solid force field. They didn't so much walk as crackle from one place to another. "Welcome to hell. Although we've recently rebranded ACE Intensive Character Development, you will be broken. You will be rebuilt. You will thank us, or at least fear us enough to pretend gratitude." Jack listened with an expression of bemused interest, which was the incorrect response to Meglurk's speech, and was duly noted. "Each of you will now be assigned quarters, according to your physiology. We pride ourselves on accommodating all species." Meagle's electrical field pulsed with what might have been pride or indigestion. It was notoriously difficult to read Teslavorian emotions. "Even you, human." The way Mygurk said human made it sound like sentient algae, which was coincidentally exactly what was standing next to Jack, a chloroplaxian. Hoop photosynthesized nervously. As the recruits dispersed to their assigned quarters, Vrex and Kazit lurked in the corridor like cartoon villains watching Jack approach his designated room. "Is it ready?" asked Vrex. Kazit's mandibles clicked enthusiastically. "Gravity generators modified. His quarters are currently set twice Earth standard. He'll be crawling on the floor within minutes. I've set up surveillance to capture the whole thing." "Excellent. A little welcome to reality moment for our soft gravity friend." The door to Jack's quarters hissed open. He stepped inside, the door closed, and the 2 officers crowded around Kit's monitoring device. The screen showed Jack looking around. the sparsely furnished room setting down his meager belongings, and then, to their astonishment, beginning a series of stretches as if preparing for a workout. Audio crackled from the monitor room. "Are there any customization options available?" The room's AI responded, "Affirmative, limited personalizations available within Academy parameters." "What's the current gravity setting?" "Current setting 2, Euro, Earth Standard." There was a pause during which Vex and K's exchanged gleeful glances. Then Jack said, something that would become legendary. "Can you increase it to triple Earth gravity?" Cadet's exoskeleton made a sound like someone dropping silverware. Did he just set gravity to 3-0? Earth Standard Jack continued sounding for all the world like someone asking for extra sprinkles on ice cream. Warning setting. Exceeds recommended parameters for human physiology. The AI responded, override authorization code. Jack 7734 Delta How. "Does he have an override code of Rex?" spluttered his breathing apparatus, bubbling furiously. On the screen, the gravity increased. Jack's posture shifted slightly to accommodate the new weight, but he remained standing, then in what would later be described as the most terrifying casual display since that time. Commander Zoom juggled active plasma grenades. Jack dropped to the floor and began doing push-ups. Kaisert's compound eyes dilated to their maximum capacity. "What in the 7 exploding suns is he doing training?" Rex whispered, a note of horrified respect entering his voice. Word spread through the Academy faster than a quantum virus. By morning, every instructor, cadet, and maintenance drone knew about the human who had not only withstood doubled gravity but had requested more. Theories abounded, ranging from he must be wearing some kind of exoskeleton to perhaps humans are actually filled with dense gases rather than the liquids we assumed. In the mess hall, Jack sat alone at a table designed for beings with very different anatomical configurations. The food dispenser had struggled to identify something suitable for human consumption and had eventually produced what appeared to be protein cubes with the consistency and flavor of lightly seasoned building materials. "Is it true?" a voice interrupted Jack's contemplation of the alleged food. The speaker was a Medusan, whose head tentacles writhed with curiosity about the gravity. Jack looked up. "A protein cube halfway to his mouth is what? True that you're training under triple Earth gravity?" "Oh, that, yeah, it's good resistance training. Back home I was getting bored with the weights available at my gym." The Medusan's tentacles froze in shock. Around the mess hall, conversations died as more cadets tuned in to the exchange. "But why?" asked the Meduse, voicing the question on everyone's minds: appendages and sensory clusters. Jack shrugged, a uniquely human gesture that many species found unsettling due to the alarming way it made. "The shoulders temporarily disappear. Earth's gravity is relatively light. Most humans who train seriously use resistance equipment. I figured since I'm here, I might as well take advantage of the customizable environment." He took a bite of the protein cube and winced, though I wish they'd put as much thought into the food replicators. Later that day, in the first official training session, Commandant Rex stood before the assembled cadets, his gaze lingering on Jack with newfound wariness. "The purpose of the Galactic Combat Academy is to push you beyond your limits," Rex announced. "To find those limits, break them, and then set new ones. Some of you," his gaze remained pointedly on Jack, "may find this process more interesting than others." Jack smiled pleasantly, standing at perfect attention despite gravity that should have made his bones creak. The other cadets maintained a respectful distance, as one might from an undetonated explosive. Rex cleared his throat, a sound like gravel being poured into a blender. "Today's initial assessment will sort you into appropriate training groups based on physical capabilities. We pride ourselves on challenging each species according to their unique strengths." The last word hung in the air like an uncomfortable silence. At a dinner party where someone has just mentioned the host's recent prison stint, as Rex outlined the assessment course, a brutal combination of strength, speed, and Endurance tests designed to identify weaknesses in every known sentient species. His eyes kept returning to the human. There was something deeply unsettling about a species that, when pranked with crushing gravity, asked for more. Perhaps Vrex thought. With a growing sense of unease, Central Command hadn't been scraping the bottom of the barrel after all. Perhaps they knew something about humans that the rest of the galaxy had yet to discover, and perhaps the joke was on them. The Academy's training arena resembled what might happen if a sadistic engineer designed a playground for particularly masochistic robots. Various obstacle courses, combat rings, and what appeared to be medieval torture devices, retrofitted with blinking lights, sprawled across a space large enough to house several small moons, which, according to persistent rumors, it occasionally did. During special training exercises, Jack stood at the starting line of the assessment course, surrounded by aliens who regarded him with the particular brand of pity usually reserved for creatures about to become roadkill. The course ahead was diabolical, starting with a wall climb that would challenge beings with actual climbing appendages, followed by a series of increasingly dangerous obstacles that culminated in what could only be described as a pit of despair. With lasers, drill instructor Manglark crackled with anticipation. "Begin on my mark. Those who fail to complete the course will be assigned to remedial training, which is essentially the same course, but with more people watching you fail." Their electrical fields sparked with what might have been amusement. 3, 2, 1, begin. The assembled cadets launched themselves at the course with varying degrees of enthusiasm and anatomical advantage. A hexapodian cadet scuttled up the wall like an industrial climbing machine. Avaluaprid took to the air, their wingspan casting dramatic shadows. A gelatinous morphoplasm simply oozed through the available gaps in the structure. And then there was Jack, who approached the wall with the calm demeanor of someone who had decided that gravity was more of a suggestion than a law. "Look at the human," sneered a crystalline being whose body refracted light in disorienting patterns. "He's going to shatter his fragile calcium sticks trying to climb that." The gathered instructors watched with undisguised curiosity. Khazit's mandibles clicked rapidly, the aeroplan equivalent of popcorn munching during an entertaining show. What happened next caused several Academy monitoring systems to run diagnostics, convinced they were malfunctioning. Jack didn't just climb the wall, he ran up it. His movements were fluid, efficient, and displayed a mastery of momentum and balance that seemed to briefly suspend the laws of physics in a way that made them seriously consider retirement. He reached the top in record time, paused for what could only be interpreted as dramatic effect, and then proceeded to demolish the rest of the course with similar efficiency. "Impossible," whispered Rex, his breathing apparatus whistling in distress. Khazit's exoskeleton had palled several shades lighter. He's not even sweating much." "Humans do that?" asked another instructor, horrified. "Apparently they secrete saline solution when their bodies need cooling. Disgusting but efficient." As Jack completed the final obstacle, leaping across the pit of despair with lasers in a display of calculated precision, the training arena fell silent. He stood at the finish line, breathing slightly harder than normal but otherwise showing no signs of distress. Lieutenant Khazit scuttled over to a monitoring station and pulled up Jack's biometric data. His muscles are operating at incredible efficiency under triple gravity. "How is this possible, Command?" Dant Rex's eyes narrowed. "I want his full background." Now Jack lay on the floor of his triple gravity quarters, eyes closed, mind drifting back to Earth. He remembered the day he'd received the acceptance notice from the Galactic Combat Academy. His fellow Marines had thrown him a party that had resulted in 3 broken tables, 1 minor explosion, and a lifetime ban from a previously well-regarded establishment in downtown San Diego. "You're going to show those fancy space lizards what humans are made of?" His squad leader had bellowed already several drinks past regulation. Jack had smiled then, just as he was smiling now, if only they could see him. His thoughts drifted further back to the grueling training regimens of Earth's various special forces programs he'd participated in. The Marine Corps had been just the beginning. After that came specialized training that pushed human physiology to its limits, and occasionally beyond programs with code names and mortality rates that were equally classified. High-gravity training chambers had been just one piece of the regimen designed to produce soldiers capable of operating in any environment. The scientists had theorized that humans, with their unusual combination of endurance, adaptability, and sheer biological stubbornness, could be conditioned to function efficiently in conditions that would other species. They were right. Jack's reminiscence was interrupted by the room's AI cadet. "Your presence is requested in Training Base 7. In 15 minutes. Acknowledged. Jack opened his eyes and rose to his feet in a single smooth motion. A feat that under triple Earth gravity should have been as impressive as bench pressing a small vehicle. Training Base 7 was usually reserved for advanced combat simulations, so Jack was surprised to find it configured as a simple sparring arena. More surprising were the dozen or so alien cadets and several instructors gathered around the perimeter, watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Cadet Jack. Drill Instructor M. Glurk crackled from one side of the arena. "Your performance during assessment has raised questions. I'm happy to answer any questions." Instructor Jack replied, standing at ease in the center of the arena. A wave of murmurs rippled through the gathered aliens. Standing at ease under triple gravity was not considered possible for a human. The fact that Jack was doing it anyway was causing considerable cognitive dissonance. "We prefer answers of the demonstrative variety," said Muglurk. "You will engage in supervised sparring matches with cadets of varying physiologies. This will help us calibrate our understanding of your capabilities." Jack nodded, his expression neutral, despite recognizing the subtext. They wanted to see if he could be broken. The first opponent was a Tone, a massive four-armed being with natural armor plating and a center of gravity lower than most banking institutions' moral standards. It lumbered into the arena, hooves clanking. "Against the metal floor, begin when ready," said Malurk, retreating to a safe distance. The Taurian charged immediately, a standard tactic for a species whose evolutionary strategy could be summarized as be a living battering ram. Jack simply waited, his posture relaxed despite the crushing gravity, until the Taurian was almost upon him. Then he moved. To the observers, it appeared as though Jack had somehow teleported Toon's side. In reality, he had executed a perfect sidestep at a speed that should have been impossible under such gravity. The Taurian, unable to adjust its momentum, barreled past and had to desperately backpedal to avoid crashing into the far wall. "Is he using augmentation technology?" demanded Rex, watching from a monitoring station. Kaz checked the readings again. Negative, no implants. No artificial enhancements, not even performance-enhancing substances. He's just doing that. What followed was less a fight and more a physics demonstration, with Jack as the professor and the Toan as the increasingly frustrated visual aid, using techniques that seemed to blend various Earth martial arts with principles of momentum and leverage. Jack systematically dismantled his opponent's attacks while expending minimal energy. When the Tauran finally yielded after being flipped onto its back for the third time, the arena was so quiet you could have heard a Calentian mollusk's thoughts, which were typically inaudible, even to telepaths. Next, said Maglark, their electrical field fluctuating with what might have been confusion. The second opponent was a Volocrid whose primary advantage was flight in the open arena. They should have been able to attack from any angle while remaining safely out of reach. This advantage lasted approximately 45 seconds before Jack demonstrated that humans had developed quite effective counters for airborne opponents over centuries of hunting flying creatures. His timing was impeccable, his aim unerring, and his ability to predict flight patterns uncanny. When the Volcrid conceded after being plucked from mid-air like an overripe fruit, murmurs of alarm replaced the previous silence. The third opponent was a morphoplasm whose amorphous body could flow around attacks and engulf opponents. Surely the instructors reasoned a solid being like a human would be at a disadvantage against such an unconventional physiology. Jack proved them wrong with a combination of rapid temperature modulation techniques using the arena's environmental controls and targeted pressure points that even the Morph Plasm's trainers hadn't known existed. The match ended with the gelatinous being retreating to a corner, its usual transparency clouded with what appeared to be embarrassment. By the time the sixth opponent admitted defeat, the atmosphere in Training Bay 7 had shifted from skepticism to something approaching reverence mixed with fear. Jack stood in the center of the arena, breathing controlled and posture perfect, looking for all the world like someone who had just completed a light workout rather than combat against. "The Academy's most promising cadets is enough," said Commandant Vrex, stepping into the arena. "Cadet Jack, you will report to my office immediately." As Jack followed Vrex out, he noticed the way the other cadets parted before him. Their expressions a mixture. Of awe and weariness, he suppressed a smile. Phase 1 of his mission was complete. Establish human capability. Threat. The Commandant settled his massive frame behind a desk that appeared to be carved from a single piece of asteroid. "Explain yourself," he said without preamble. "I'm not sure what requires explanation." "Commandant," Jack replied, standing at attention. Despite not being ordered to do so, under triple gravity, the position should have been excruciating. Jack made it look like a relaxed stance. "Your records indicate you're a standard human military operative. There is nothing in your file about enhanced capabilities." "That's because there are no enhancements, sir. I'm a product of specialized training programs." "Nothing more." Rex's breathing apparatus bubbled skeptically. "No species naturally adapts to triple their native gravity within days. Humans do," Jack said simply. "We've been conditioning ourselves to survive extreme environments for millennia. Our entire evolutionary history is defined by adaptation. The programs I participated in simply accelerated and focused that natural tendency." Vrex studied him with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of stellar empires. "The Galactic Council has consistently classified humans as a minor species category C in terms of military potential. Our intelligence suggested your kind were fragile, limited to your homeworld's conditions." Jack's expression remained neutral, but a glint appeared in his eyes. "Your intelligence was incomplete, so it would seem." Rex's massive hands rested on the desk. "What is your actual purpose here? Human, why would Earth send someone with your capabilities to our academy as a trainee?" The question hung in the air. Between them, heavy with implication, Jack considered his response carefully. The mission parameters allowed for limited disclosure if it served the greater objective. Earth is seeking greater integration with the galactic community. He said, "Finally, we believe our capabilities have been underestimated. This has led to diplomatic and military miscalculations that could eventually threaten stability. I'm here to provide a more accurate baseline for human capabilities." A demonstration viewer said, understanding dawning. "Yes, sir." The Commandant was silent for a long moment, his alien features unreadable. Then, to Jack's surprise, a sound emerged from Vrex's breathing apparatus that might have been laughter. "You know," Vic said, "in all my cycles as Commandant, no one has ever turned one of my pranks into a diplomatic incident. I find I rather admire the approach." Jack allowed himself a small smile. Humans have a saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." "We tend to take it literally indeed." Rex rose from his desk, his massive frame seeming somehow less intimidating than before. "Well, Cadet Jack, since you're so eager for challenge, I believe it's time we revised your training regimen. Standard protocols. Seem inadequate, I would welcome that, sir. I thought you might." Vrex's eyes gleamed with newfound respect and what might have been anticipation. Report to Advanced Training Sector 12 tomorrow at first bell. We're going to find out exactly what humans are capable of. As Jack left the office, he couldn't help but think that Phase 2 earning respect might be proceeding ahead of schedule. Now came the hard part, living up to the standard he'd just established, the triple gravity in his quarters almost. Felt comfortable as he prepared for the next day's challenges. Almost Advanced Training Sector. 12 turned out to be the Academy's euphemism for hell with better lighting. The space was a massive environmental chamber capable of simulating conditions, from vacuum to crushing oceanic depths. Today it was configured as a combat arena, with one significant modification. Variable gravity fields that could change mid-exercise. A crowd had gathered in the observation gallery. Word of the humans' abilities had spread like an airborne contagion. But with more fascination and less sneezing, Jack stood in the center of the arena facing his newest challenge. Gyar, the Academy's top-ranked cadet, and a Tessanthian whose species had evolved on a high-gravity world. With toxic atmosphere, Tessanthians were living tanks with reinforced skeletal structures and musculature dense enough to stop small projectiles. They were also notoriously proud. "I hear you think you're special." Soft-skinned greeter rumbled, flexing appendages that looked capable of crushing spacecraft hulls. "Triple gravity is my species' vacation setting." Jack simply nodded, conserving energy and words with equal efficiency. Commandant Rex's voice echoed through the chamber. "This exercise will test adaptability. Under changing conditions, gravity will fluctuate randomly between 1 and 4 times Earth's standard. Last one standing wins." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. 4 times Earth. Gravity would crush most species' internal organs like soggy nutrient packets. "Begin." The gravity immediately plummeted to Earth. Normal Jaruk stumbled momentarily, disoriented by the sudden lightness. Jack, however, launched into action with the explosive speed of a predator, covering the distance between them in Abler. Before GKI could recover, Jack landed 3 precisely targeted strikes to nerve clusters that evolutionary biologists across the galaxy would have sworn weren't accessible without surgical equipment. The gravity slammed back to triple strength. Jack adjusted mid-strike, compensating instantly, while glared in pain and surprise. "That's impossible," the alien managed, before Jack swept his legs with a move that defied several principles of leverage. The next 5 minutes became a physics lesson that the Academy's theoretical department would analyze for years, as gravity fluctuated wildly. Jack seemed to anticipate each change microseconds before it happened, adjusting his fighting style to exploit the transitions. At 4 times Earth gravity, when even Jack's enhanced physiology should have faltered, he dropped into a combat stance that minimized exposure while maximizing stability. Griuk, despite his natural advantages, found himself increasingly frustrated as Jack turned the crushing weight into a tactical asset. The crushing finale came when gravity cycled rapidly from minimum to maximum. Jack timed his approach perfectly, using the momentary lightness to launch himself at Gertuk, then letting the sudden increase in gravity multiply the force of his strike. The Tessanthian dropped like a decommissioned battle cruiser. Silence fell over the observation gallery, then astonishingly Griuk began to laugh. A sound like rocks in an industrial grinder. "Well fought, human," he rumbled, struggling to his feet. "Perhaps your species isn't as pathetic as the databases claim." Jack offered a hand in the universal gesture of respect. After a moment's hesitation, Griuk took it. In the gallery, Rex exchanged glances with Kazit. "I think," he said quietly, "we may need to update those databases." The Academy's graduation ceremony was traditionally a somber affair, steeped in millennia of pomp and martial grandeur. This year, however, an undercurrent of excitement hummed through. The proceedings like a poorly shielded reactor core. The Grand Hall, a cavernous space designed to accommodate beings of all dimensions, was packed with dignitaries, military officials, and Academy staff. And for the first time in recorded history, a diplomatic contingent from Earth occupied a prominent position near the stage. Jack stood at attention among the graduating cadets, his posture perfect, despite the ceremonial armor that weighed roughly the same as a small vehicle. The past months had transformed the Academy in ways no one could have predicted after the now legendary match with Gupt. Jack had become something of a reluctant celebrity. Other cadets began requesting training under increased gravity. The medical bay reported a 300% increase in gravity-related injuries, followed by a gradual adaptation curve that mirrored Jack's own progress on a less dramatic scale. Today announced Commandant Rex, his formal regalia making his already impressive frame look like a decorated warship. We recognize not just achievement, but evolution. The purpose of this academy has always been to forge the galaxy's finest warriors, but true excellence requires us to constantly redefine what we believe possible. His gaze fell on Jack with what could only be described as approving resignation. This year's honor graduate has shattered records in every assessment category. More importantly, they have forced us to reevaluate long-held assumptions about species' capabilities and potential. The assembled crowd shifted with anticipation. The identity of the honor graduate was supposedly confidential until announcement, but the betting pools across 3 systems had closed overwhelmingly in one direction. Cadet Jack of Earth stepped forward. As Jack advanced to receive the ceremonial blade that symbolized Academy graduation, a message flashed across his neural implant, the one piece of technology he'd kept carefully hidden from the Academy's scans. It was from Earth Command Tour, as always. Mission accomplished Phase 1. Complete. The Galactic Council votes tomorrow on reclassifying human threat. Correction, capability, assessment. Jack permitted himself a small smile as he knelt before Vrex to receive the blade. The Commandant leaned in as he performed the ceremonial tap on each shoulder. "I understand your quarters are still set to triple gravity," Rex murmured quiet enough that only Jack could hear. "Yes, sir. It feels normal now." "And what happens when you return to Earth's gravity, Jack's?" Smile widened, fractionally. "I'll feel like I can fly." Later, at the reception that followed, Jack found himself approached by representatives from a dozen worlds, all suddenly eager to establish training exchanges with Earth's military cadet, now sporting. A lieutenant commander's insignia chittered with what passed for amusement as they watched. From practical joke to diplomatic incident to interspecies alliance, they observed an impressive trajectory. Jack shrugged modestly. Humans have always been good at adapting. Across the room, Gruck raised a ceremonial chalice in silent toast. "Jack,